All right, everyone. Welcome to Creative Class Entrepreneurs. It's your girl, Jackie Clark, and I'm here today to have an amazing conversation with these beautiful ladies about creating a successful cannabis business. So, we are missing one of our panelists, so hopefully she joins in. But as of right now, I have the beautiful Q Nicole and the beautiful Mercedes Young. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So, for those who don't know, to get started, can you both tell us a little bit about your cannabis business? So, we'll start with Nicole first. Q Nicole first.
Sure. So I am the CEO and founder of WH Farms. We are a seed-to-shelf, vertically integrated product manufacturing company. So we manufacture beauty and wellness products rich with cannabinoids that are hemp-derived, federally legal, and help other businesses launch into this space by allowing them access to quality products through our white label program, as well as just introducing a general audience to the benefits of cannabinoids and cannabis. We believe in the plant medicinal value, and we love the mission that we have to really spread it throughout the communities.
I love that. Mercedes.
Awesome. So I'm Mercedes C. Young, and I am the CEO and owner of Earth's Dew. We're a natural holistic company that is seeking to change the narrative and to redefine what cannabis is, getting rid of all the stigmas associated and focusing heavily on educating as well as supplying like homeopathic remedies with these natural herbs and products that God placed here on earth. And I'm also the owner of the Green Rush Playbook, which is a program that teaches people how to get into the cannabis industry and just how to make money via e-com in general as well. So
I love that. And thank you, ladies, again so much for being here and going to share all of your insights. But you guys just mentioned something that I wanted to touch on quickly. The cannabis industry has always been a thing, but now with it being legal in a lot of countries and states, everybody is rushing to create a cannabis ban because they think this is a quick get rich. I'm gonna just sell cannabis. Can you guys is that a myth? Is this get rich scheme a myth when it comes to the cannabis industry? And any one of you can start.
Well, I definitely think it's not a myth. One of the inspirations that we had when launching WH Farms as hemp and cannabis cultivators is we wanted to create opportunities for entrepreneurs to get into this space and go through a less convoluted process than what state governments were proposing at the time. And so, in our 2 years, we've helped over 150 entrepreneurs launch or expand their CBD product line. And in doing so, we realized that many of them have successful brands, successful businesses. They're making revenue that allows them a different lifestyle. It gives them the ability to see a pathway for generational wealth creation in this space. And we haven't even cracked the surface in this industry. So it being a myth, I definitely think that's not the case. I think there's huge opportunity. There are also huge obstacles because we're still pioneering a space. It's very uncharted. And so, like Mercedes, we do a great deal of educating our business owners as well, just so that we can help them understand how not to get caught up in the traps or the nuances of this space, which could give credence to the risk, but not to say that it's a myth, but it definitely is a risky environment, but certainly opportunity available.
Mercedes?
I mean, she just said it all. I really can't add anything to that. It's definitely perfect. I don't think that, it's a myth per se, but like she said, I mean, there's definitely obstacles, but there's a lot of money to be made. As far as get rich quick, it's not a quick thing. It takes time to build a business, to develop it. But it is faster, I would say, than maybe some other streams because, cannabis is one of those things where people want it. And once they like your product, they're going to keep coming back to you. So, yeah.
So what is one of the first steps anybody who's listening, and if you are interested in starting a cannabis brand, drop some cannabis leaves or leaf in the chat so we can connect and all stay like-minded. But what are a few key things that someone should look into when they first are going to venture in starting a cannabis business? Like what's the number 1, 2, 3 things that they should do? And Mercedes, we'll start with you.
I would say that the number one thing is to look up like your local laws and as far as when it comes to registration is concerned, to look up just to make sure that you're operating within the law. That is the first obstacle or the first task that I would suggest that you do. And then but before you even do that, I would say you have to be mentally prepared. It's a mind thing first. Like, it's a mindset that you have to have. And I believe that there's a lot of money to be made in cannabis. But you have to have some type of love for it. It's not one of those, I would say, because there is obstacles that you have to overcome. It's one of those things that you have to have some type of love or some type of passion for it in order to keep going, because the obstacles are great. But with Q, Nicole, and myself and other people that can help navigate you guys through those landmines, it won't be as tedious or stringent or cumbersome, because you will be able to skip over all those things that we hit on the way there. But yeah, definitely that. So having the mindset of like wanting to help people, having the mindset of taking it seriously as a business. It's not something that you're just going to slap on Instagram and think that you're going to make some sales off of there. Like, a lot of people think that, social media is the main revenue driving channel. And that's not the case at all, because your accounts will get taken, your posts will be removed if you try to solicit sales and things like that. So just knowing that going into it, that you have to have a strong mindset. And then I would say that the third thing would be to establish a brand and what your brand voice is, and like build your target audience. So try to figure out, who are you trying to target? What customers are you most appealing to? And building a brand around that and establishing a brand voice.
Mercedes gave the blueprint for sure, right? And those components are super valuable. I'll pick up where she kind of was leading into about target audience. I actually would also, I would say my three things would be, first of all, develop the idea of the problem that you want to solve. This cannabis industry is very big and it's very vague and it's very general. And I do believe that having a strong niche, having a strong brand identity, by understanding how you want to show up in the marketplace, what type of problem you want to solve, and how you want to solve that problem, is going to help with developing the parameters, so that you can then begin to see, well, who's my ideal customer? How do I attract that audience? And then how do I further penetrate that audience? I secondly would agree with what she mentioned about mindset. This is a game where it is mind over matter. This is not a get rich quick program. You have to have the ability to go deep with a build like this. You have to have the ability to go deep within yourself, within your skill set. We've mentioned before in other panels that in many of the roles that we have to consider as we expand and grow our brands, we are the first party or first person occupying those roles and really creating those job descriptions and fully understanding what we need, so that we don't waste what we have on personnel that may not be able to get the job done. So that means that you have to be able to grow fast and pivot easily and learn quickly and adapt to very uncertain circumstances. And that takes professional development. So don't minimize what it would require to continuously invest in yourself. And I'll kind of pivot into my third thing is create a network. If you're going to have to create these investments into yourself, if you're going to have to develop professionally in order to really ride the wave, because there is definitely some ups and downs and some very volatile circumstances that you have to outlast. And I think that the best way to prepare yourself to do that is to surround yourself with like-minded people. We have a CBDpreneur Academy, and within our academy, we do a lot of community-related events, because we knew 2-3 years ago that you're not going to be on the phone. Everyone you're on the phone with isn't building a cannabis brand. Many of your friends wouldn't even think about coming into this space, let alone making an investment and building a business. So you need that space where you're able to breathe and relax and learn and fail fast and not feel intimidated by the mistakes that come along in the space.
I love that you talked about failing fast. And I think, that's something people misunderstand a lot. They believe that I'm just going to create a successful business and there's not going to be any failures. You learn so much in failure. And so with that, we're going to pivot through some of the questions, but with that, if you guys would share, have you guys had any failures in your cannabis business that have taught you something, or a failure that you really want some people to understand so they don't also make the same mistake? And either one of you can start.
Mercedes, I'll let you go.
Okay. So one of my failures, I would say, is, I mean, there's so many, but a broad one I would say is let me think. Not really. I mean, I'm trying to find one that's like super meaningful. Because I mean, obviously we make financial mistakes. So that's something that's going to happen, right? You know, you buy products from these people, you develop relationships with vendors, and you go into it like trusting. And then sometimes that happens and you send them money because there's okay, that I'm going down a rabbit hole, but there is a market where, like, you know, all the time, sometimes you're wiring money to people, these vendors. And so you have to wire money in hopes and in trust that they're going to fulfill their end of the bargain and send out products from these farms, right? So that's just something that you can be careful with. I've never really got, but I've seen it happen before.
We would take care of you, Mercedes.
Right. But I would say one of my failures would be not realizing that when you're marketing to your customers and your clientele, that it's ever evolving and ever changing. So what worked back in 2020 is not working in 2023. And so when you're so dead set and focused on, but this used to work before, and I know it used to work, and then you're doing the same thing, and you're driving in the same, you're putting in the same amount of effort and work, and you're realizing that you're just not yielding the same results. You can't be so stuck in your ways that you can't pivot and try to find a different way to reach your consumer. So I would say that's probably one of my biggest failures per se, but yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that as well. For me, I think that one of my hiring failures was really making sure that I created the time in my schedule as the CEO to measure and monitor performance and results before I found the waste in our operating budget. So I think that when you think about profit and loss as a business owner, you think about efficiencies and how you can create more efficiencies to make sure, like, are they doing what they say they're doing? Are they actually, driving and owning the role the way that they say they should, et cetera? And then also when you're developing teams, and we exist in such a remote world now, there's so many corporate decorums that are no longer like really present. And I think that regardless of what type of business you're building, it behooves us all to be professional. So I have been guilty of venting down and not venting up. I've changed that though. But one of my original failures I could definitely say is I vented down instead of venting up. But to replace that, I've developed a board of advisors so that if I needed to really talk about the heaviness of the company, I would talk out to my advisors about that instead of sharing or exposing that to my team, because I want to protect their morale. I want to protect their focus, and we're going to get through it. And sometimes when you tell people more than they should know, they don't see the other side of it, even though as a visionary and as a leader, you do. So I think that those are two that I can mention.
I love that. And you guys both talked about two really key points in terms of like understanding, changing your marketing, changing your strategies. Another conversation I had, we talked about being able to adapt with the times. And then for sure, realizing, the fear that you put in your team also kind of downplays how much trust they have in you. And, if you're supposed to be their fearless leader, you got to be careful what you tell your team. So really understanding those two scopes. But Danielle Gray has joined us. We're going to bring her to this stage. Hello.
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys being so flexible.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, as creative entrepreneurs, we know business does not wait for anybody. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So we're so grateful that you were able to join us. So for those who are tuning in, let us know a little bit about yourself and your business.
Sure. So my name is Danielle Gray. I am CEO of World of Unoya, which means beautiful thinking. I'm actually in our new space right now, which means it's called Beautiful Thinkers Only. So we are focused on mental health, mindfulness, and self-care, and using CBD as a tool to help ignite beautiful thinking. That's what we're about. So we have CBD products, gummies, tinctures, and based in Atlanta, so we can't go too far, get too crazy yet. And then we also have pet products as well. CBD better products, yes.
Ooh. So the
Yeah.
ladies were just sharing a little bit about some of their failures or something that, they failed in that they wanted to encourage and educate our audience on. Do you have a failure or something that, you wish you now know, that you would share with somebody else so they don't make that same mistake?
Yeah, so a failure, there's like a lot of failures, but I'm thinking one big one for me that I still work through is selling myself too short initially, as far as thinking that an amount of money was way more valuable than I didn't understand money at the time. So I thought, oh, somebody's giving me, oh my gosh, is $50,000. It's like, that's actually not as much as you think it is. So there's certain things that I didn't quite understand, and I gave a little bit too much of my company. So that's something that I am working through, but I think that you kind of you have to go through those things to know where your value is. So, it is what it is. I think the other thing is, making, I guess, having the right relationships and trusting people to, especially if you're not making the CBD yourself, right? You got to make connections with the right people that you can trust, so that, because if I'm not doing it myself, I have to be able to trust the people that are going to. And manufacturers just closed down. You don't know what happens. You're trying to run around. So I think that's a big, big failure. That it's just, it is what it is. All of it comes with failures overall.
Of course. And
Yeah.
Mercedes talked a little bit about that, and Q alluded to that as well. So with that, you guys also all mentioned simultaneously trust. And I wanted to ask, how do you build trust as a cannabis business when there's so many other businesses? Because I think it was you, Mercedes, or Q, you said that people always go, if it's great, I'm always going to go to Q. I'm never going to go to anybody else. How do you build that trust with your business? And Q, we'll start with you.
I think that it's important to establish the right framework for all relationships. I think that great communication is important. Creating multiple channels of communication. Sometimes it is great to bring in your team, whether it's, an associate or another advisor, so that their eyes and ears can blend themselves available to the conversation, so that knows the newness of a relationship can be established. We're in one of those industries where there's oftentimes sketch opportunities, and people are often very sharky, very interested. It's a sexy space. And so we get a lot of offers, and we entertain a lot of conversations, and being able to properly sift through what's valuable and what's not for the company, I think starts with initially having the appropriate framework. And then also whatever contractual agreements. I'm very big on transparency. I'm very big on let's document it. Let's be on the same page. Let's create alignment, because I believe that money is a currency, and anyone that we do business with, we want them to win. We want them to win. We want their customers to return. We want the testimonials to be through the roof. And so our practice is to establish sound communication in writing, so that we're able to just be clear. Let's get the business out of the way so we can have fun and make money.
Yeah, I think she said that definitely beautifully. For me, when it comes to, there's two, I guess, layers to this question. There's building trust with the customers, and then there's building trust with your vendors. And so I would say for the customers, we build trust by open communication as well. But I think the trust really comes in when you have a spectacular product, because word of mouth is the fastest form of travel, even till this day in the digital age, right? So if you have someone that's like, oh my God, I had this product, and they experience like the amazing effects and the benefits that comes from this product, they're going to tell a friend, and that friend is going to tell a friend. And next thing you know, your business is spreading like wildfire. So it's having a spectacular product first and foremost, that you can have trust in, that you've tested, that is good. And as soon as people start using it, they'll know it for themselves too. And then they'll just put people on, they do that all the time. As far as, vendors is concerned, I tend to build trust and find my vendors and of that such by they have a lot of it's not festivals. I'm losing they have like expos, a lot of expos. Yes. So I go to the expos, and I meet vendors that way. But I also like word of mouth. Like your network is literally everything. So if I have some of my friends that are like, hey, like this farm is incredible. Like you have to try this product. And normally the farms are pretty good about sending you samples and you being able to test them, and you can send them out to the labs to get those tested as well. And then you get the feedback. And so once you get feedback from them, like Q says, you put things into writing, and then, you just have to trust that they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. But anytime that you're doing business with somebody new, there is always an element of risk.
I love that you broke those down into two things, because that is very true. So especially with the customers, what we decided to do to build trust is to um, partner it with other self-care things. So we're like, hey, just like meditation, this is a tool. Just like going on a nature walk or whatever, whatever that is, that's how we can do that. And we were just showing people how to do that. I think education always builds trust. So the more that they realize that we know what we're talking about, the more that they feel comfortable talking with us. And I think, because I think it's all really been said. The only thing I would add is intuition. So I've been really leaning heavily into my intuition lately. I'm like, okay, I've learned a lot. I can use what I've learned, and then, really feel in my gut what feels right or what feels wrong. I've just had a recent manufacturer that was really kind, meant well, but was not moving in the way that I needed them to. And so that was an intuition call. Like, you know what? If I want to grow, do I want to save this person's feelings, or do I want to save my business? And so it was just a real, open conversation about this is what I need, and that those sort of things. So I've been just trying to trust my gut, because especially with the vendor side, there's a lot, like it's a very sexy, like Keith said, it's a very sexy experience. So yeah, that I think that it's been covered for sure. But trust, intuition is a big thing for me.
Wanted to just chime in and say my customer experience is a little bit different, because I will say that we recently had an issue where we had a theft issue due to a customer. And it was, again, we're B2B primarily. And so because of that, you talk about really engaging in sound issues and relationships. And so we've come to realize that when we try to have this personable approach with your customers, they have to realize that if anything happens where it harms the business, then in response, we have to protect the business. So for the first time, I've had to criminally go, like it's an entire process, and it's so sad, but at the end of the day, it's also what's required as a business owner. And so I think that developing the elasticity to understand that regardless of what you put in place, things still could go wrong, know how to wipe the slate clean, treat all customers with the highest value and respect, and continue to start over every day, because you don't want to wear that disappointment as a business owner either.
Wow. Sorry that you're going through that, but that topic in regards to legalities is something I want to talk about. I think we as entrepreneurs, no matter what business you're in, we start creating all these cool businesses, but we forget the business, and then we forget the legal. We just jump to the creative. And I do want to talk about branding and all that stuff. But, in terms of just legalities, like how important is it to understand the legal considerations for a cannabis business state by state? And anybody can jump in. How does someone go about understanding what legally they can do in their state or country? Where do you start with that?
Well, I can go first, just because there are certain things that we decided not to touch because we were so concerned about legality. So again, we're in Georgia, we're in Atlanta, and we're in the South. We just were very concerned, especially in different stores, what they wanted in there. They were like, oh, we don't want any THC, or we do, or we're okay. And so we took the side of just being very careful and using products that we know are federally legal, which that's just our approach. We've had recently, we were playing with the idea of adding Delta 9, and then recently a county right over next to us just completely taking all Delta 9 products out of their stores. So that was like, okay, like, so I think it's really state by state, sometimes even county by county. And it's just for us to do our due diligence and learn.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly what she said. You have to stay abreast on, the laws are ever changing. Yeah. Ever changing. Something legal today and it's illegal tomorrow, and you better get rid of all this line of product. So it's one of those things where, like, I think it just brings it back to the beginning of the conversation, where you have to be pliable and flexible, and you have to go with the waves. Danielle, she plays on the safer side. I'm on the little riskier side.
All right.
Got all the THC products.
I'm here for it. Look, I'm here for it.
So I'm not afraid to go into a little bit of uncharted territory and to take those risks. But I do know, because of those risks, at any point in time, it can be stripped away from me, and I can be sitting on, thousands of dollars worth of inventory that I can no longer move. I understand those risks that I take, but again, high risk yields, high rewards. My THC line is like one of the strongest moneymakers in my product lineup. So that's definitely a risk that I'm willing to take. But also, having a sound lawyer, having a good lawyer that you can, and I have a good lawyer on my team that I can like run everything by, and it's their job to stay abreast with the ever changing updates with the legality of the issues and stuff. And honestly too, when you have a strong network of people like us, right? When things change in their state, they're in the group chat complaining like, oh man, Texas is trying to ban Delta 8 right now. Like, and then people are luring up and going after these states. And I love it. And so you can't help but to hear about things that are happening in other states, because you have such a broad network of people all over the US and Canada as well, that are being affected. And they are very much so vocalizing it, because they invest a lot of money into it.
Yeah, no, everything that's been said, I completely agree with. Our general counsel is very excellent at really understanding the breadth of risk that we have to deal and mitigate around. And we also, carry THC products, but we do so understanding the verticals that we sell on, so that we don't necessarily overexpose ourselves in ways that can be, detrimental to the company. I do think also you have to have a variety of legal counsel. So certain things are subject matter specific, criminal as opposed to intellectual property, as opposed to general contracts, et cetera, as opposed to cannabis specific, and just really understanding that one attorney may not be able to do it, but knowing that your general counsel should at least be able to get you the information that's needed so that the company can remain in place. And aside from legal, what most people don't consider or remember as business owners is insurance. Making sure that you have the proper insurances on your product, your business practices, your distribution practices, and all of the things, so that if there are legal challenges that arise, you take the proper protocol. You also have other measures in place to keep the functionality of your business going.
I love that. You guys, there's two things I want to talk about. One, Mercedes, you mentioned about purchasing a lot of product. I want to ask about how do you guys go about purchasing? Like, how much do you know to take? How much little do you take? What happens in the case where you bought so much and then now you can't sell it? What does that look like? And then I want to switch into the creative side about branding, and how do you actually post on social? Like, what can you actually say? Because I'm in Canada, and I know as an event person trying to work with, cannabis brands, the promotion's weird. So I haven't really worked with them too much, because I'm like, but I want to promote, but then you can't promote, you can't smoke it here. I don't know. So before we get into that whole conversation, like I said, Mercedes, we'll start with you, and then Danielle and Q, please jump in when you can. What are you purchasing power? How much do you buy? What do you do if you've bought too much and it's now illegal? Like, what do you do with that? How do you gauge that?
In terms of purchasing power, it's very different from me versus when I first started out. So me now versus when I first started out is completely two different ball games. And the game has changed so much. As I was in the process of developing the Green Rush playbook, I'm going back and I'm talking to like some of the vendors that I first used when I started out. And I'm like, hey, like, what's your MOQ? Like, what's your minimal order quantity at this point? And some of them have like astronomical thresholds that wasn't the threshold when I first started. So like you jump from like a 5,000 minimum to like 10,000 minimum now. And it's like for the average person who's just starting a business, they cannot afford to spend $10,000 worth of product and they don't even have a customer base yet. So it's one of those things that has changed. And so with me and the Green Rush playbook, like I'm going to offer like, you know, a beginner starter package for them. And maybe we can partner with Q to like get these people together so that they can get a start. It's just going along and knowing what your lead times are too. Cause that's another thing is lead times. When you place an order today, that don't mean your order is going to be ready to be shipped out tomorrow. It does not work like that. Sometimes the lead times is like, oh yeah, we got a 4-week lead time right now. They're ever changing. It just depends on who you're working with and who your manufacturers are, who your distributors are, like your farm, like everything is changing. Like, and then another thing is that everything is not always in season. So like sometimes you got these strains and then sometimes these strains are no longer available. And these are the strains that we have available right now. So it's a constant change. It's a constant thing of like being flexible and being able to you have to be able to roll with the punches. Like you absolutely have to be able to. But when I first started out, just to kind of button it up, I want to say I probably bought maybe about because there's so much more to it than just the product itself. You also have packaging. You also have COAs. You also have like all these things that are associated with it. But I mean, the MOQs was like smaller back then. So I think I might have started out with like maybe $2,500 worth of products, but like not just flour, you know, it was just a variety of different stuff. But now, honey, you can't get that nowhere. You cannot. I mean, you can,
except for WH Farms. Because, you know, as we enter the chat, one of the things that I love about what we have been able to create as a farm, cultivating the industrial hemp and then processing, manufacturing, and distributing products is that our MOQs are very palatable. We're still at 100 units per product. We offer variations in flavors and fragrances. We even can package products in unique packaging outside of our white label packaging, because to Mercedes' point, we understand that the startup business owner is not willing to take a risk and order thousands of products in units that they have to then have on a shelf and hope to sell with no customer base, with no real traction and understanding how to sell in this space. Even if you know how to sell hair oil, you may not know how well you can sell CBD hair oil, especially if your sales are dependent on e-commerce and e-commerce alone. So we really have been very successful at really helping launch a number of businesses because of that. And to your point, Mercedes, we would love to partner with your playbook and offer some sort of startup package for your team. And even more than that, we also, because we manufacture to order, which is one of the benefits to our business, because we believe that if you have to have products from us and it has to sit on the shelf for 12 months, we want it to be of the best quality for that entire 12-month period. We don't want people to feel that they're buying something that's so dated that in 3 or 4 months when they open up the containers, it's going to look different and they have to come back. And it's, you know, so we do a lot of being intentional about that. And that's because a part of the customer journey is helping customers to understand their unknowns. Like, this is what you don't know yet, but these are the things, because we're pioneering an industry, that we're willing to share and make sure that you are aware of so that we can help you move forward. So I think that for ordering, the average order size that we see a lot of times is between $4,500 to $5,500, which is a good size for multiple SKUs to start any sort of online or offline space. I think that it also, to Mercedes' point, you have to consider packaging, branding, labels, all of these other things in order to get your product to your customer. So whatever your budget is, don't spend it all on products, because that is not going to get you your sale. Your sale is going to be based on the experience that you're able to offer your customer. So we do share that a lot with our businesses. And then in terms of lead time, I do think that it's important to have manufacturing agreements in place with vendors that you work with so that you can create context around those things. We, give a standard lead time as well because we manufacture the order, but we create a consistency that allows us to work within our operations and know what that time is to extend it. Because we stick well within our pocket and our scientists is in-house and we don't tend to go outside for a lot of things, we can control a lot of nuances. We don't delve into what we can't do well. So we don't, go out and make the next best. We haven't yet mastered pet treats. That's something that we're working on, but we've not mastered it. We have products that we've been working on for 6 to 8 months that we've not mastered. We only release once we master because we want to kind of create a well-oiled machine, but also offer maximum value so that a person doesn't have to, buy 3,000 products to start a business.
I love that. I think that it's all of those things. A lot of it's just, again, I'm such an intuition person. I'm just like, okay, we have this, but there's another side to this that is stores, right? Stores and being in these different places. So initially we were all online. I could track my inventory. I was like, okay, this is about how much you're doing. Like I have my little reordering point. I'm like, oh, I'm good. And then we started expanding and being in stores and smaller spaces like Pilates studios. Like, how do you start to manage that? And we're still trying to figure that out, to be completely honest, because it's all changing. And then there's different stores that carry one thing that don't carry another. So, paying attention to, I'm a big data person. Looking at which, how is it working? Let's look back. Let's look at the sales. What's working, what's not. We've, canceled some or discontinued some products because they cost us more than what we were even able to bring in. So that was good by looking at the data, but also seeing what works. And actually a great example is, gummies. Gummies always do well. So we had like our 30 pack, but we had this really cool event that we did, and they were like, do you have any smaller ones for for the people? And I was like, so now we have these smaller packs to be able to work. Now that's different because these are the same product in different packaging, and but they're two different SKUs. But so there's a lot of different ways, I think, to look at it. But I think overall being very aware of how much you have in your inventory at all times is really, the best way I can play it. So, and even taking account, I had one of our customers that's in Massachusetts. We shipped them a lot of product. One of them was several items were stolen. So what do we do with that? I was planning. I was like, oh, we're good. I sent that off, and now I need to make sure that relationship is good. So I'm going to send it out. And now I'm much further behind than I was anticipating that I was. So now I'm making calls, trying to make sure that I get this inventory in. So I think there's a lot of different elements to it that make it complex, but it's all doable, if you just kind of have an idea of the data.
It's a lot of things. You guys shared so much. Like I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just like, I didn't think it was this much, but I think this is the thing for someone who's not in that space. A puff here. I don't do edibles because it's not good for me, but a puff here is good on a regular day. But I don't think we think of all the steps. I'm really so grateful for your guys' transparency and honesty and willingness to help other women or men in this space really be successful. And I know we could be here for days and hours, so I do want to wrap this up. And you guys mentioned a little bit about packaging and such. How important is packaging to your brand? Because I know with like Danielle, you showed your packaging. I know there's still legal things that you guys have to have that kind of make the packaging look ugly. Let's be clear. But do you guys put a lot of stock into designing for the packaging, or is the designing more built on the website and social? And then the second part to that is, and you guys can fill in when you can, how do you guys use social to promote your brand? Because I know there's a lot of, well, I don't know. I've heard and from other friends that there's a lot of things that you can say, can't say, post on social. So how do you guys design your branding and packaging? And is it for the product? Is it for social? And then how do you promote that and showcase your business online? And anybody can start.
Well, oh, go ahead. Are you sure? Okay. For me personally, my branding and packaging is like changing as we speak. But when I first started, I knew that my brand voice, I was geared towards like homeopathic remedies. So I wanted that old school apothecary feel, vibe, bright and airy, right? That was my target audience. But then I started to kind of morph my voice into more elegance and classy because I knew I wanted it to be an upscale brand, right? Because we're a premium brand, we have premium products and premium prices. So I've personally been developing new packaging for over a year now. So all of the designing process, it was, oh my God, Jesus, I never want to do it again. The designing process, because we have so many SKUs, the designing process was very long, very hard, very tedious. It was like a lot going back and forth with the designers. It was a lot like making sure that, like you said, the all of the legal jargon and everything that's on there is on there, making sure that there's no spelling errors, making sure that you're not missing any ingredients or anything like that. And then just the design of it aesthetically, like, okay, like the type of can do I want? But then you have to take into account that like cannabis flower holds up better in glass than it does in aluminum, than it does in plastic. So you have to take all these different things into consideration, because what you want to do is you want to maximize your shelf life of everything. And if your packaging is gonna prohibit you from being great, then you need to go back to the drawing board. In addition to that, like gummies, like during the summertime, the gummies melt. So it's like, what type of packaging can I create that is going to get there fast and it's not going to allow these gummies to melt?
Right.
It's a real thing. So it's just so much that you have to take into an account and consideration. But for me, like, I am like a design and aesthetic person. Like, I am so excited. Like on June 3rd, we're releasing, which is our 3rd year anniversary, we're releasing all of our new products. Oh, it's not new products, but our new packaging, and everything is custom. I'm getting like shipments in from China as we speak. But it definitely is a process, and it's definitely something where you can be creative, but be patient with yourself, take your time. And make sure that you do it right, because if you got a typo, if you're missing an ingredient, that's a $20,000 mistake. You know what I'm saying? That's all of that packaging gone to waste, because if somebody's allergic to this ingredient and you forgot to include it on there, then you have to go back to the drawing board and redo it. And so it's just making sure that you have multiple eyes on it. Like, I have everybody to go over my packaging before I make that final order. So it's just one of those things.
I think that Mercedes gave great insight on the process. It takes time. So because our business and our setup is so wide, we have the farm that's 4 hours away, corporate office in Charlotte, and so we do a lot of things B2B. So we didn't dive into retail packaging initially because we really were working to stabilize various parts of the business. When we did decide to dive into really identifying a retail package value, I didn't have any clue as to how much time it would take, how intentional it would be. But what I appreciate about Mercedes' response is that it does take that time. Our brand value and our brand aesthetic has always been to share the opportunity, to share the generational wealth, the legacy, and just kind of like what we are able to bring from the ground to the earth. And so with that, we wanted to create a packaging that supports it. And we're still in development. I'm still figuring it out. And I oftentimes test it out in different focus groups or at markets. I try different things out to get responses, because we're still a B2B company. So we don't, put a lot of pressure on ourselves in that regard. And so that is another suggestion that I would make to the audience that's listening. Be willing to play and practice. Don't put so much pressure on yourself in this process as a creative that you can't throw things against the wall, walk away from it. I've always believed that you can't build a business with a gun to your head. And so in any way that you are just under the gun or stressed, figure out a way to take a puff and release so that you can let the good energy flow through you and be fluid with it, because it represents so much about the customer's experience. And I definitely want to re-echo what Mercedes said about having multiple eyes check it. If you're going to use smart codes, we use QR codes on our labels so that we are able to provide our COAs, making sure all of those things are properly stored, and just doing what you can to keep that label as engaging and even educational as possible, so that your customer can have like an elongated experience with your brand.
You know, this is so interesting because yes, to all of what's been said. So I had an interesting entry, which is, you know, I own my marketing firm for 7 years, just celebrate my 7-year anniversary. So I do design, do graphic design and all this. So I was like, oh, perfect, right? I could do this, is no problem. Definitely have printed a couple of things with typos. So that, because I was thinking that there was all these different SKUs. So I was designing these different packages and didn't really know what to put on there. I think there's a couple of things that I learned along the way that I think may be helpful. One was I was so proud of my brand that I wanted my brand to be the biggest thing, but that people just don't care about that. So I found that tell them what's in there should be the biggest thing before your brand. Because I had like my logo was bigger than it saying CBD drops. Like that didn't make sense. So I think there was certain things that I was so proud of what this brand was that you forget about the customer experience. I think the other thing is, you know, we're not always with our customers to explain what this thing does and how it works. So you were talking about the QR codes. I've printed it out where the QR code was too small.
Too small, has to be
It needs to be, you know, red. So it's all those different elements that you have to be aware of. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it has to look interesting. It has to look fun, but it has to be educational. It has to be, you know, follow all the regulations and all that. So there's so many different elements to it that I was not expecting. But I think that the more that I think it aligns with the audience that you were trying to address, which Mercedes was saying, I knew who I was going after. So I made a brand that felt. So that was why we decided not to use the cannabis leaf. It was to be a little bit different and to talk. I mean, that was more a psychedelic experience, but that's another, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. So I think that from a marketing standpoint, it's really important for you to understand who your audience is so that you can create a label for them. What are these people like? What do they not know? What do they know? Do you have to explain this part? Because you don't have a lot of space. You have limited space. It's actually why we moved from jars for our pet treats to a bag. I needed more real estate to explain what was going on, because it's just like, okay, this is cool, but when do I give these to my dogs and those types of things? So tons of different things that you have to put on. I'm actually designing labels as we speak as well, because something that worked before, you can't say certain things. I know we're going to go into what you can and can't say. You can't make claims. You can't make any claims. It's like you can't say what it actually does. And so that's where you really have to be creative, is figuring out how you say these different things without making any claims. And that is
interesting.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. And I know we have to wrap. I want to be respectful of your guys' time, but this is such a dynamic conversation. And there's a lot, like I said, I'm not in this space, but there's so much I'm learning. Like, I didn't think of that. So to wrap, and, you know, Q, we'll start with you to wrap, and all you guys can make these points. What are, you know, Danielle just talked about certain claims. Like, you can't make claims like this is going to make you feel better. How do you deal with that? And then how do you also promote your business on social? Because everyone's using either TikTok, Instagram. I don't know if you can promote on LinkedIn for cannabis. I don't know. But, like, you know, how do you do that without getting shadow banned or getting your account taken down because of misinformation? So Q, we'll start with you.
So we have a great social media team, and they've done a great job with maintaining just consistent traffic and growth on the WH Farms page, as well as making sure that we know what to post. It's all about the content you create. It's really in the content creation space where what you post on social, whether or not it will live or die. You can have a great picture and just put things in the caption that you know how to mask certain words, etc., and it'll live. And if you are more direct in the picture and even less more ambiguous in the caption, the picture can have you flagged. So I tell people all the time to be mindful of the content that they create. We find that platforms don't really enjoy active smoking or active elements that can be enticing to children. But outside of that, there is a lot of flexibility and opportunity. LinkedIn is a great space for cannabis. Twitter, obviously, just became the lead advocate in cannabis. Reddit is also a great source for cannabis, especially with blogs. We found great success also with, the normal platforms of Instagram and Facebook. I am Generation X/millennial, so I haven't quite made it to TikTok yet. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get there before they kick us out of the country, kick it out of our country. But I try to keep our social team focused and having a conversation where I know our audience is, because we had already tapped into a demographic, a target audience. We knew what social platforms they were on. And so we kind of created conversations there, as well as YouTube. I should mention that as well. And then you had another question about claims. So FDA has a statement that, many cannabis companies use that pretty much gives you a general claim or disclaimer that you're able to make on your website, on your product labels, and that just relieves you of making any promises. But fortunately, your client testimonials is the biggest social proof. And so many websites will feature reviews, client testimonials, and you can have that not only on your site, but your Google address or your Google My Business page or your Google Maps, and all of these spaces, Yelp, where people are, where they're making reviews about your products. That is your social credibility. That is the research and development. And when the FDA catches up, at least everybody will know that your product has been in circulation doing the great things that it can do.
Love that. Mercedes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she took the words right out of my mouth. It's in the reviews. It's in the reviews. You have to be very active when it comes to posting those incredible testimonials, so that other people can. It's social proof. That's what it is. And it's if this person bought this and it could do this for them, I want to purchase it too and see if it has the same effect for me as well. And so when it's literally just in the social proof when it comes to marketing and talking to your customer off of or online for that matter. And in terms of what you can and can't say, like she said, the FDA, you make the general statement about the claims and stuff like that. You can't make all these wild, crazy claims oh yeah, it's going to cure cancer. It very well may, right? But
it does.
You can't say that. You cannot say that. You can say, hey, did something for my dad. If you have a personal experience, you can share your personal experience, but you cannot say this can do this for you. But in addition to that, as far as social media and certain flag words, there are words that I just don't put on social media. I noticed that, and this is for free. I'm gonna throw this one out there. So when it comes to posting on social media, if you're gonna have something on there that's very blatant that says cannabis, or is some products that says THC, you cannot in the caption say link in bio for purchase, because then that becomes a sale and then they're gonna take that down. But there are many different ways and caveats to get around that, and that is some things that we explore in the Green Rush playbook.
Oh, I love that. Look, let me get my playbook. So I think the way that we decided to go around it, and let me actually tell this story. So when we first started, we were connected to a Square beta program with that we were really fortunate to use at the time to be able to accept payments, because that's a whole thing. Not even for now. But what they did was they went through our whole social media and said, you can't process any payments until you take all of these down. We had no phone number. We couldn't call anybody. They just said, you have claims on your site. So we went through probably 5, rounds of, is it okay now? Is it okay now? So what I found is ask questions. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Got sleep? those are the types of things that I was able to get, or the workaround, instead of claiming it, saying, hey, do you have this? You should try CBD. And that was what worked for us. And honestly, this question is why we branded ourselves as Beautiful Thinkers in general. To your point, how do you promote events? How do you do those things? We got around it by saying we're doing Beautiful Thinkers only events. And these include Unoya products as well. So it was a way around, because we definitely got kicked off Eventbrite for having a CBD sound bath, which I was like, really, a meditation you gonna cut off? But it is that. So I had to be very, very aware of that. And I think the Google reviews is huge. We ask people like, hey, can you do it? So it's very clear, like you said, not just on the website, because that's a great place for it to be, but also on Google. And we also are really big with blogs. So we don't make claims. We talk about scenarios. We talk about ways to use it and those types of things. So I always go with, for anybody listening, for any blog or anything that you write, you should be answering 3 questions. What, so what, now what? What's the topic? So what, why should I care? And then now what do you want me to do? Which is usually to buy. So that's kind of how I structure our content, and step away from claims is just saying, talk about all the things that you can do after you experience beautiful thinking.
Honestly, you guys have given my head's blown, and I'm not in this. And I know this is so valuable. And again, thank you guys for being so transparent and so honest with your findings, your ups and your downs. And I completely wish you guys the most success. So for those who want to connect with each and every one of you, get from the farm, get the playbook, help your dog out, how can everybody? You gotta help the dog. My nephew.
You gotta help the dogs. You gotta
cut up. I might have to give
help yourself. Help the dogs.
But how can people connect with you guys and support your business in either their local states or internationally? So Q, we'll start with you. How can people connect with you online?
So we definitely ship nationwide in certain countries as well. We are available at whfarms.co. We launched the CBDpreneur Academy in January of this year, which is our e-commerce e-learning platform where we really just take you through a process of growing and scaling a digital CBD brand, as well as just really understanding the nuances of this industry. And so we're excited that that's also featured on the site, as well as if you are interested in white labeling, if you're just ready to go straight to it and you're just like, listen, I want to get started and test some things in the marketplace, then our company is available to handle your white labeling needs.
Love it. Mercedes?
You can find me on earthstew.com is the business that I have, my cannabis business, but the greenrushplaybook.com is where you can go and sign up for our waiting list. Then once we launch, you'll get the confirmation email. But yeah, and then we're on social media. My personal handle is at Mercedes C. Young, but then it's at earths.do for everything else. And the Green Rush Playbook doesn't have an Instagram handle, so you just got to follow me.
I love it, because I have the same, a very similar pitch. So to keep up with World of Unoya CBD products for human and pet is at World of Unoya on Instagram and Twitter. We're on Facebook too, but our website is worldofunoya.com. And then my personal is at Danielle Gray, MBA. I actually do content workshops, and I do a lot of marketing and graphic design things. So if you're interested in needing a little marketing help, I'm absolutely open for that as well. My firm name is Generic, which means, brand so good we don't need one. So that's the whole concept. So we're definitely open to that. If you're realizing, okay, I want to put this out and you need some marketing help or content help, I'm happy to do that as well.
I love that. Thank y'all so much for being here. This was such an amazing conversation. These ladies have so much wealth of knowledge, so I implore everybody to tap in with them, go to their Instagrams, go to their sites, DM them, follow up, support women in business in the cannabis space. And I'm so grateful you guys are here. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.